Welcome back, everyone, and check out this story. It's now getting a lot of attention right now on clicktohouston.com. Hurricane Beryl has now become a Category 4 hurricane. It's made history as the earliest Category 4 on record. Hurricane warnings are in effect for several different islands in the Caribbean Sea, expected to be impacted by the storm. Right now, forecast models expect Beryl to impact the Yucatan Peninsula by the end of the week. Scientists are predicting that the storm will continue to weaken as it moves through the Gulf of Mexico. And right now, here to break down how the hurricane came to be and another tropical system now brewing in the tropics is meteorologist Justin Stapleton.
You got three. Look, I got three circles on the board here, Bill.
Crazy.
Right?
It's crazy.
Well, you know, what's interesting about this is that this, in an active season, this is what we would see in maybe, you know, mid-August, right? We'd see these tropical waves coming off of Africa, and they would just be like lined up, right? Just one after the other, after the other, after the other. It's July 1st, right? And so that'll give you an indication. The amount, and we've been talking about this most of the spring, is the sea surface temperatures, right, or the fuel that these storms use here across the tropical Atlantic was way hotter than anything we had ever seen before, right? And so if you want to think of it in terms of like standard deviations, you know, mathematics use it like that. It was like 2 to 3 deviations above what the normal is, right? And so that's order of magnitude. So we're talking about explosive fuel for these things to use, and I think Beryl right here in particular is a really good test case for that, because this went from a tropical storm to a Category 4 hurricane in about 24 hours, right?
Unbelievable.
It is, exactly, and that'll let you know. So this is the third one we're watching here. If this one forms, it'll probably become a tropical storm. This is Debbie, all right? So that one right now looks like it's literally going to go right on that same track. Now, obviously, Tropical Depression Chris, we were watching over the weekend. Dodgy was talking about it last night. It's already fallen apart, moved into the Mexican coastline, and that's all she wrote, right? So let's just start with this right now, and then we're going to jump a little tight around Beryl about this, okay? Here's why I don't think this is something we need to worry about, which I know was one of the questions everybody's asking, right?
Yeah.
And here's why. We have a huge area of high pressure right here. Okay? It's been sitting over Texas for about 2 weeks. It's now shifting right across parts of New Orleans. So if you think about a high does this, think of a high as kind of like a pinwheel, right? And so it goes clockwise winds like that, right? Well, remember, hurricanes and tropical storms don't have any steering mechanisms. They're at the behest of whatever the bigger storms that are out there, or I should say bigger forces that are out there. There's one right here called the Bermuda High. It sits out here. It's a permanent feature of the global landscape. And so that's why a lot of these take this track, right? Because if you think of a pinwheel, it goes around and it just pushes everything that way. And so when Tropical Storm Alberto came, it did the same thing. This high was here. Alberto went like that, and it went whoosh, and just knocked it into Mexico. So I think that's what's going to happen with Beryl as well, right? But that said, here are some of the problems with that. So there's Grenada right there, right? And then you've got the, you know, St. Augustine and the Grenadine Islands, these tiny little islands right in through here. There's the center of the eye again. This is why it was upgraded. That's going a direct hit right for it as a Category 4 hurricane. Unfortunately, the people there, hopefully everybody has battened down, either got out if they needed to or have holed up, because they're about to have just, pardon my French here, they're going to have a hell of a next 12 to 24 hours. This is going to be awful, right, as that moves on through.
It looks like it.
Well, it is. This is going to be real bad once this gets through, and we can finally get some, you know, video and TikToks and whatnot as people finally, and we'll see what kind of infrastructure it made. You remember during, I can't remember, I think it was Irma, when it smashed up Puerto Rico, it took 2 days for us to see what was going on.
Right.
Because there's no cable, there was nothing.
No.
There were no towers, there was no nothing, right? And so nobody could get anything out.
No, you can't transmit the pictures out when you have no...
If there's no infrastructure, if it's gone, right? Anyway, so watch for that over the next 12 hours. We're going to watch that very carefully. Okay, so let's track this now. So this is going to stay at Category 4 as it moves into the Caribbean. It is going to interact with some wind shear, which will probably downgrade it just a bit, okay? So right now it's moving west-northwest at about 20 miles an hour. Right, this is the 8 o'clock advisory. Max winds about 130 miles an hour, right? So that's why I said this devastation of Grenada's tiny little island, right? And it's just going to get hammered. So the next big island that it could interact with is Jamaica right here towards, you know, let's say Wednesday afternoon. Okay. So now watch what happens as we go in towards Thursday and Friday. So by Friday morning, we're talking about a Category 2 hurricane smacking into the Yucatan Peninsula. There's Cancun, a lot of resort towns up and down this area.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, we've
People
all been
vacationing.
to.
It's 4th of July week.
4th of July
People are going to be out there like crazy.
Exactly right. So that's why I said I think this is something that people really need to pay attention to if you do have plans out there. Now, once we get to Saturday, notice that pushes on over into the southern Bay of Campeche here, right? And what happens from there? Well, let me show you something. I want to show you what the models show, okay? So I've done two things. This is the American model, and I've put the spaghetti plots, right? Those little plots that we always use for that. We call them spaghetti models. Yes. So watch what happens. Now, notice that the majority of those are starting to push right across parts of Jamaica, right? So here's the blob. This is the center of the storm, or whatever's left of it at that point as it moves through. And then notice the majority of those move right here across the Yucatan, right? There's Cancun. So there's our big impact. Now, it's not sort of like a big red globby mess, right? Meaning that will this weekend? Yes, and that's part of the issue. I think as it starts to move, will probably interact with some of the eastern mountains of Cuba here, and that'll kind of chew it up a little bit. So the question is, what does it look like? That's Friday morning at 10 a.m., by the way. And then as we get in towards our Friday afternoon and into Saturday, where does it go from there? And this is where you see this big, the models basically go from here to just widen out, right? And that's because as you go later in time, there are more errors that it has to account for, right? Okay, right. To try to figure out what's what. So the question is, does it move a little further north? You know, is that a possibility? The TVCN is sort of like the consensus model that we use a lot, right? Okay. It's sort of a put together of a lot from the National Hurricane Center. Okay. That keeps it on more of a southerly track, meaning that high we were just talking about has more of an influence. If that were to back off, or if that were to go over towards, let's say, Atlanta, then that provides a little bit more of an avenue for it to take more of a northerly turn. Make sense? Yeah. So if that's the case, then maybe up around Brownsville, you know, the valley might need to watch to see whatever can be left of this and what kind of heavy rain that would bring and kind of a storm surge, right? So, but you notice that we do have one model. Yes, I know, I see it. It's going right for us, right? There's always one outlier, but look how far north that one is from everybody else. So it's a rogue one saying, no, I'm going to take it all the way up here. Here's the thing. Western Cuba is like a cheese grater, right? It has very jagged mountains. Right. Storms have gotten through here, and the computers have said it's going right for the Keys. It's going right for West Palm. It gets across here, and it just rips it to shreds.
Disintegrates?
Right, like it did earlier. There was one that was supposed to happen. I want to say it was late May, and it was bullseyeing right here, and it just went through here, and it just ripped it to pieces. Mm-hmm. Now, they still got multiple inches of rain, but it wasn't a storm. Right. And that's kind of the stuff we've got to figure out is what's happening with that. And it's all literally because of this area of high pressure right here. What does this dome do? If that stays in place where it is, then it'll help steer everything right into northern Mexico.
Which would be great.
Which would not be good for our friends in Mexico.
Not for them.
But certainly
better for us.
Much better for us as we get into the holiday weekend.
Not good for those folks.
Yeah, but we'll watch it.
Okay.
We'll let you
know. Very good breakdown.
Thank you,
man.
I appreciate that.
You always explain things incredibly well.
That's right.